Welcome to the Slut Next Door podcast, where we dive deep into desire, unravel kinks and fetishes, and explore the deliciously naughty side of self discovery. I'm Beatrix Vale, an erotic audio creator, and your guide to all things kinky and curious. So let's begin. Have you ever been so lost in pleasure that nothing else exists? Just pumping or rubbing, edging and surrendering to the bliss? Well, welcome to the world of gooning. Today I'm going to break down what makes gooning so intoxicating and answer what the heck is it? I'm also going to break down the psychology behind gooning and the different types of gooners that exist. Now, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. Also, if you'd like to take a deep dive into my content, especially my gooning content, click the link in my bio and you will find a plethora of gooning content. And honestly, I love that I am a guiding voice through Gooner's experiences. I love that. But let's go ahead and hop into it. Let's talk about gooning. Now, everyone has masturbated at some point in their lives, but have you ever been so caught into this immense sexual pleasure while masturbating? Like where your eyes are glazed over or even rolling back in your head, or time just simply no longer exists, and you're so completely lost in that self pleasure. That's gooning. It's not just stroking or rubbing, it's surrendering. It's the moment when pleasure overrides any logical thought, when the rational part of your brain just completely melts away and you have only the need to keep going, to keep edging, to keep chasing that next wave of bliss over and over again until nothing else exists. Gooning is like a state of mind. It's not just what you do with your hands, it's what happens in your brain. And once you slip into that state enough times, you start to crave it. Some may even obsess over it. But at a very basic level, gooning is deep, prolonged edging. And edging is when you masturbate and you don't let yourself over the edge. You don't climax. You hold back and you keep doing that over and over and over. That's gooning. And if you've ever gooned before, you understand that it's an altered state of consciousness. It's almost trance-like. A couple years ago, I wanted to experience what gooning was like because I was making gooning content and I like to know all the things when I'm making content in a certain theme. So I figured I really need to try out gooning. And so in my Discord server, I invited my members to kind of join me. We were on a voice chat and I was streaming porn and we did it for like up to 3 hours. And I definitely felt that altered state of consciousness. After about an hour, I felt I was high. Like my heart was racing. I was sweating. And it's not like I was like doing much. I was sitting there holding um, a vibrator to me. So I wasn't moving, but I was like sweating. And yeah, it's hard to explain. It definitely is an altered state of consciousness. And the pleasure just keeps going and going and going. I like to think of it as a, way to get high without doing drugs, really. I mean, that's what it felt like to me. So, you can kind of think of it as gooning becomes this self-induced hypnosis in a way, because the deeper you edge, the longer you edge, the more you drop into that kind of mental state that isn't like your normal reality. It's just all pleasure, all sensation, all stimulation. It's beautiful. And I love gooners. They are so sweet. And I'm talking about men because there are men that profess themselves as gooners. And they're always the most fun to interact with because they're just so into pleasure. Like it's just all this celebration of the female body, the celebration of their own penis. It's just all a celebration in a way. Um, I also think it's important to note that gooning, in my opinion, has a lot to do with the love of porn. So, porn is so readily available nowadays. I mean, you can hop online and just consume yourself into hours and hours of porn. And I feel like, there's some people that say gooning really took off in 2020 when we were all locked up. Maybe. But I believe that this is just my thinking, my opinion. I think that gooning became a thing because we do live in a world where porn is so accessible. And, the concept of gooning didn't come about here recently in today's times because I've heard from men that are older and say that, well, I was gooning, in the 70s. So it's not something that's new, but I think that this culture, in a way, this online culture produced itself out of the world of porn, where I believe that people just wanted to come together and celebrate porn, where it's not, just this weird porn pervert kind of thing. It's more like a celebration. I think that people just want to emote, that how much they love porn. And their addiction to porn becomes something that is pleasurable and triggers them, and they almost celebrate it, something they're proud of. And I do want to touch on porn addiction as well. I so I have so much gooning content where I'm telling you to get lost in your porn addiction, get lost in the pleasure. But I also have released kind of a aftercare kind of file in a way because I do want to promote healthy porn consumption. And there's a lot of people out there that believe that porn is evil. It shouldn't exist because it promotes addiction and whatever else they say about it. I personally believe that porn is not the problem when it comes to porn addiction. I think that porn is art. I also believe it's the celebration of human sexuality, the beauty of our bodies, a celebration of sex, if you will, because we are sexual creatures. But porn addiction is a thing. And I think there should be more common sense type of thinking when looking at porn addiction. I believe that when someone becomes addicted to porn, and when I say addicted, it means their life is affected. Like they stop being social. They even miss work. It affects their life in a negative way. When you become addicted to porn, you're using porn to fill a void in your life. And it has nothing to do with porn or sex. It could be that you're just highly stressed out, depressed, anxious, whatever. and porn becomes something, maybe the only thing that's good in your life, and you start making terrible decisions for porn consumption, that can easily be replaced by eating sugar or being addicted to smoking cigarettes. It doesn't have to be porn. So that's why I don't think porn is the problem. The problem is mental health. And I always like to use this example as well. When there are some times in my life where I have spent a whole weekend binging a TV show. I mean, just like insane amounts of TV viewing where I can't stop pressing next on the next episode. We've all probably done that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that if that becomes something that's occasional. Now, if I did that every single week, I'm keeping myself from doing productive things or seeing my family or friends, whatever it is. So I view excessive gooning the same way. If you have a free weekend and you're like, you know what, I'm going to spend the whole evening gooning to porn. I don't understand how that's any different than if that person were like, have a whole evening open. I'm going to just really overload myself on this show on Netflix. I don't see the difference in that for me because that person is just having a moment of escaping life for a moment. Sometimes that feels really good to escape life like that. The problem becomes that if you're choosing porn over being productive in your life, you're choosing porn over socializing with friends, you're staying up too late at night, and the next day you either call out to work or you're not as productive at work because you stayed up too late gooning. That's where the problem lies. So, with all that said, I absolutely encourage healthy porn consumption, healthy gooning, even. I don't think porn is evil. I don't think gooning is a waste of time if you're able to confidently say, this isn't affecting my life in a negative way. And I always like to suggest, before you go to press play on porn, think, why am I pressing play? Why am I about to press play? Is it because I'm lonely? Is it because I'm depressed? Is it because I had a stressful day? Or is it because I just want to feel good? You know, how you answer that question will be able to guide your thinking and hopefully guide your decision on whether you should press play. Because, for example, if you were to press before you press play and you're like, well, I'm doing this because I am feeling depressed. Well, maybe you should think about that outside of porn. Maybe you shouldn't press play. Maybe you should call and speak to someone, a friend or a partner or something, because continuing to use porn to medicate yourself, never a good choice. So I just wanted to bring up the ethical side of gooning encouragement before I dived deeper into this episode, because I do think it's ethical for me as a content creator of gooning content to have gooners hear me say these things. I think that is important and something that I will continue to keep doing, as well as making incredibly encouraging gooning content. But now let's look into why gooning feels so good. What's happening in your brain when you enter a mindless, drooling, pleasure obsessed state? Because it's not just about that physical pleasure, it's about how your brain rewires itself. It becomes this neurological loop because every time you edge, your brain is releasing dopamine. it's a pleasure chemical that keeps you craving more and more. But when you edge for long periods without that climax, without that release, your dopamine levels stay elevated, keeping you in that heightened arousal, kind of trapped in a way in an endless cycle of pleasure. And it's that same chemical loop that fuels addiction. That's why gooning can feel so consuming, and your brain learns to chase that high. And suddenly it becomes not just an indulgence, but a need for more. And I really do see it as a self induced hypnosis. As a hypno creator, I like to, kind of educate that we often go into trance like states on our own without even knowing. Like if you're if you've ever driven a long ways, like on a road trip, there becomes a certain point where you've driven for a while, and you're listening to music or a podcast, and suddenly an hour just passed. You were fully like driving safely. You were pretty much there, but you weren't in a way because your brain decided to kind of kick back in a way. Or sometimes it happens when we're deep inside of a book, when you're reading and you're just so consumed in that book or even a TV show. That time just it almost doesn't exist, and it just happens like with a snap of the fingers. And the same thing can happen in gooning. Your mind slows down, your thoughts drift away, and you enter this kind of dreamy type state where all that matters is sensation. And that's why gooning and hypnosis work so well together. Because when you listen to a goon loop or a hypnosis file, it's guiding you even deeper and reinforcing the need that's already there. And now that we've unraveled the psychology behind gooning, let's talk about the different types of gooners. Because not all gooners are the same. Some crave encouragement, like gentle, seductive whispers urging them to stroke deeper, to go deeper, to sink into that mindless, pleasure drunk state, where others, they need to be humiliated, reminding them that they're nothing more than a pathetic, addicted pumper, completely ruled by their urges. I like to think that those are the two major paths. And in my experience with working with gooners, it's either you want me to encourage you, and in my content, I'm often like a goon mommy. A goon mommy is like a nurturing voice in a way that's just urging you and seductively urging you to go deeper. And if I'm to think deeply about these types, especially the goon mommy gooners, I believe that maybe, just maybe, they feel they feel even more pleasure because a warm, safe female voice is telling them that what they're doing in that moment is good, and they want them to do more, and it makes them feel safe. Like, I think, about this one file that I've done that's very well liked. It's, Goon Mommy Cuddles, I believe. And Goon Mommy just is wrapping herself around her gooner and cuddling him while he's just sitting there mindlessly stroking. It seems like a silly concept, but it's well liked because I think that's such a unique experience in a way. And then the other side, the humiliating side, that's a very fun side. Um, it's kind of like I think, if I'm to think deeply about that and try to unpack that myself, a gooner that likes to be humiliated, I think that they recognize that, like, I wish I didn't like this so much, kind of like, I love how much I hate it. I hate how much I love it type of thing. And then just having that female voice call them a porn piggy or a pathetic gooner, it's I've talked about humiliation on this podcast multiple times now. I think that for some, when you take that weak spot and make it vulnerable and out in the open, it produces pleasure. Kind of like if I'm going to be good at something, well, yeah, I'm going to show you how much of a pathetic porn piggy I am by doing even more. And on the other hand, the men that like to be encouraged to goon, they thrive on the praise. They don't just pump for pleasure, they pump to please, to feel that encouragement, the guidance, the reassurance. It's hearing things like, that's it, baby. Deeper. Slow down. That's a good boy. Keep pumping for me. Don't stop. You love this, don't you? You were made for this. And in that moment, it's just those words, it's just kind of send them even deeper, bring even more pleasure. And then flip that around, our gooner humiliation, the addicts that want to be mocked. They don't want to just be encouraged, they want to be degraded and get off on how weak they are, how easily controlled they become, how they just can't even think straight anymore. They're going to want to love to hear things like, oh my God, look at you drooling, stroking, completely brainless. This is all you're good for, isn't it? Just a pathetic little goon slave. You'll never stop. You don't even want to stop. You belong to porn, you belong to your pleasure. So for them, it's all about losing dignity, losing control, losing the ability to think beyond their next pump. But then I see there's another type of gooner, which is a pornosexual gooner. So I like to think of these guys they just love porn. They want to celebrate it. And a true pornosexual gooner has kind of set themselves to believe that they don't need sex, they just need porn. And it's a lifestyle, if you will. It's an obsession. And, pornosexual that can be used as an encouragement or in a degrading way. And I'm sure there's people out there that are like, oh my gosh, someone calls themselves a pornosexual. Like, they don't even want to have sex, they just want to masturbate the rest of their lives. Well, to me, I'm going to tell them, who cares? I mean, if they are comfortable with, we have asexual people that don't want to have sex. If this person is happy, not depressed, are living their best life, and they're like, listen, I'd rather receive all my sexual pleasure through porn. Who the fuck are we to judge them? That's just my thinking. But pornosexuals, they just pretty much worship porn. They spend hours chasing the perfect clip or rewatching probably a clip they've watched a million times before. Just pure consumption. Absolutely adore porn, adore women, adore porn stars, worship the ground that they walk on. Just pure pornosexual bliss. So, if you are a gooner, which one are you? Are you the eager, obedient, good gooner who loves encouragement? Or are you the pathetic stroke addict who craves humiliation? Or are you the pornosexual gooner who has dedicated their life to the love of porn and is proud of it? Or are you something completely different that I didn't even mention in this episode? Another type of gooner. Maybe you're a little bit of everything. Feel free to comment on this episode, or I did put on my X, my Twitter, which my Twitter handle is Miss Beatrix01. I put up a poll to ask my viewers what type of gooner they are. I am totally curious. I love data. That turns me on. So let me know. And if you need a voice in your ear guiding you deeper into your gooning, parentheses, in a healthy, ethical way, check out my Goon files. You can click the link in my bio. They are on Loyal Fans. I also have a Subscribe Star link, and I also have a lot of free content out there. Actually, this week I just released a file called Goon Cult Awakening, where I am mother porn of a make-believe cult. And it just provided a very unique experience on a life of gooning, kind of that feeling like you can't resist type of deal. And of course, I used all the clever antics that a cult leader would use. But thank you so much for listening. And I hope that I was able to provide light on the topic of gooning. And I hope I was able to make you feel seen, you filthy little gooner. Until next time, bye. And that's a wrap for this episode of The Slut Next Door, where we dive deep into the raw, unapologetic truths of human desire. If you loved what you heard today, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a juicy moment. Want to connect with me outside the podcast? Click the link in my bio, where you can find lots of juicy content and options. Until next time, I'm Beatrix Vale, your Slut Next Door, and I'll see you in the next episode.